Many of us have encountered cheaters, some blatantly hacking, others not so much. Me? I've interviewed cheaters, I have montaged their popularity, I've had my eyes on them for a while. But every story has more than one side. What does the anti-cheat have to say about this? What does Riot themselves have to say about this? I've asked them directly, and I now know more details about the ongoing fight between these two very distinct parties, and who's most likely gonna win the war. The first person I asked is someone who works to fight cheaters every single day. Someone who continuously updates, studies, and does everything they can to keep both you and my own games free of hackers. But really, who's winning that war? Vanguard or the cheaters? In the last interview I had, it seemed like the hacker was unbannable. It seemed like the cheaters were winning, getting more popular, becoming more accessible. But is that really the truth? Riot isn't dumb, and getting their side of the story is a lot more eye-opening, to say the least. For every cheating program, seller, group, website, forum, and more, you'll have Riot lingering. You'll have them buying the cheats themselves in secret, dismantling, fighting, and dare I say, winning. For the purpose of this video, let me make it more clear. I refer to Riot as a collective, but that isn't fair at all. These are workers and people who put in hours to make all this happen. However, since Riot is a big company, there are certain ground rules. I can't call some people by their official name or provide full details at all times. However, when I'm permitted to do so, I'll make it as clear as possible. We will even get the luxury to touch on smurfing and boosting in this video and the crazy truth behind what's happening there, and trust me, it's pretty mind-blowing. With that all being said, I will be playing by some rules to make sure I can get info to you guys, but there's no bias going on here from my part. I will, to the best of my knowledge, only point towards the truth, and if Riot does something wrong, I'll definitely say it. If cheaters are telling the truth, well, also admit that as well. But more importantly, we'll uncover the biggest lies to do within the space, and hopefully contain some pretty big misinformation. Let's start at the root of all of this. Vanguard. Thing is, when I say root, I quite literally mean it. Vanguard has taken lots of punches since Valorant's release, as it sits in our kernels to prevent cheats. The first thing to make clear is Vanguard itself is advanced. Vanguard is successful at making this fight between both sides a much more complicated one. Now, let's get the facts straight. A clearer, much more unbiased take on what Vanguard is exactly doing and what it is would be some ordinary gamer's video. Actually, shout out to the man I'm talking to at the Vanguard team, as he linked this video himself. Despite the community's direct take, Ring Zero or kernel anti-cheats are not exclusive to Riot. Call of Duty, Rainbow Six Siege, and Battlefield have their own invasive anti-cheats. Now, keep in mind, every time an anti-cheat would be updated, the cheaters will always make the next move. Anti-cheats weren't always at kernel level, but every time an anti-cheat updates, so does the cheaters, and it became a race to the bottom, a race on which software had the most power and control. Every time anti-cheats became more invasive, so did cheats, and as Montage puts it in his own video, it's a negative to us as players. And that's because we either accept the anti-cheat the way it is and how it is needed to protect us, or we forego any chance of fighting against cheaters altogether. But anti-cheats are complicated. Vanguard is easily the most hardcore version, having to boot up with your computer in order to mark you as trusted. Closing Vanguard will force you to reboot your computer so that it can reinitialize and once again mark you as trusted. One of the biggest hot topics is that Vanguard is spyware. This is because the parent company of Riot Games is Tencent. Tencent itself is a Chinese company, and the problem here is that in China, the government has the final say on data collection. Now, Montage goes into extensive details, but he ran his own tests using a hardware middleman and found that the data is only ever being transferred between your computer and the Riot servers while actively playing League of Legends or Valorant. It doesn't appear to be active whatsoever when not engaged with the game itself. In the end, I cannot speak too much on this. I generally believe we are always sharing our data across the internet, through software and to plenty of private companies at basically all times. Where our data ends up, how it's used, etc., will never always be in our control, but it will always be a personal risk assessment and responsibility on what you choose to ultimately use. In the end, Riot has been open about the fact that some amount of data has to be shared in order to detect cheats, and even more so repeat offenders. It is possible for some small amount of data, like usernames, to be caught up in the crossfire. Riot claims they are only used for detection and held in warm storage before being deleted after 14 days. If you trust Riot, don't really care about this, or otherwise are okay with the risks, then you're good to go. If you're overly wary and want to be extra careful, there's nothing wrong with that either. But whatever route or opinion you form, it still goes back to my main point, that it is a personal decision and a self-made risk assessment. Based off of my interview with an ex-cheater, he claimed to have programmed his own software cheats. He also made things seem easy. My premise on the original title was calling him unbannable. Now, to make it clear, he's actually had countless accounts banned, but the point was he used spoofers and bought accounts in bulk for cheap and then just simply hops back into the game ready to cheat once more. Furthermore, not only this cheater, but plenty of cheaters claim that certain cheats are nearly or not detectable without manual review. This would be a process of you messing up, making it obvious that you're cheating, then having Riot manually review everything themselves. But apparently, if you stay secretive about it and make yourself seem normal, you can keep getting away with it forever. The idea behind this is DMA cheats, by using a dual PC setup and a DMA card in between the two. The thing is, this video could be very highly technical, but I would much prefer it to be highly accessible. So to make it simpler, the idea here is that one PC will host the cheats without Vanguard running, and the other will run Valorant with Vanguard active. Then they will communicate to each other via various sets of hardware, masking themselves and becoming undetectable by the anti-cheats. Plenty of cheaters will continue to also claim simplicity and ease because they have one major motivation. It's not to rank up. It's not to wreak havoc on our games. It's to make money. Think about it this way. If you are someone who is frustrated, wants to rank up, or think you're funny by trolling with cheats, you will begin to look around in order to buy them. Plenty of options will come up, some for $5, some for $20 a day, and some for $500 with the promise of being undetectable and frequently updated alongside Valorant. They're a scam. Or there really is a cheat, but you won't go far without getting banned almost immediately. Think of it like this: anything you can find that easily, Riot has found it long before you. And to make it more clear, anyone who does buy these cheats and then subsequently gets banned won't be shouting scam. They won't be saying anything that can reach anyone. The Discords are owned by the cheaters, the forums controlled by the admins, and everything spewing negativity will be suppressed. Want them to go public? Who's gonna do that and admit that they tried to cheat? No one will have sympathy for you. Meanwhile, the cheaters keep selling half-baked software, making videos on YouTube promoting that they work and that they're unbannable for the continued pursuit of the one thing. Okay, some cheaters that we spot in our games get banned immediately, others are getting scammed for money, but is it all that easy? Do some people just get away with it? Is there no justice? Well, the truth is different, starting with spoofing. It's been around for a long time, and was always a way to dodge around hardware bans. However, it's not that simple. To get back into the game, there is no one-click solution, and anyone claiming so is lying. Previously, to evade hardware bans, people would still have to reinstall Windows, flash their BIOS, and spoof their IP plus MAC address in order to get back into the game. The amount of time all this takes is a huge deterrent to hackers. They will spend more time spoofing than they will be cheating in any of our games. But it gets even better. Valorant has the best solution to spoofing, which uses TPM. This is something that is embedded into your CPU, and it cannot be spoofed or tampered with, no matter what you try to do. If you are a laptop user, for example, you are simply forever banned. End of story. On PC, there are some TPM chips that you plug in. However, it would cost $30 and it is a D-TPM. This is different than an F-TPM, and Vanguard can actually spot and see the difference, meaning there's also a hefty ongoing cost to continue spoofing. Okay, spoofing is one thing, and to some extent it's still possible, but just keep in mind it takes a lot of time and is quite expensive for the cheaters. But what if the cheater just doesn't get caught? Hence DMA cheats. Well, see this chart we used? Highlighted are now all the hardware components that Vanguard can catch, which just happens to be all of them. Now luckily I had some honesty from the team, so you can see this little component here is actually the hardest one to catch, but they do catch it, it's just trickier than the others. Now the best part about Vanguard is as it gets updated, it can search for any of these devices and ban the user the minute they are detected. What's even crazier is every time there's a new DMA card or AKM box, fuser, etc., Riot will obtain these and have them implemented into Vanguard in order to detect them. This means every time there's an update like that, there are massive ban waves of cheaters. But that's the key takeaway here. Vanguard keeps improving. It's not an automated system that can magically solve all of our problems. It's a tool that Riot uses against cheaters. But never mistaken the amount of work that's going on behind the scenes. You have to just trust me here, but the team is always spending countless hours of research, banning, implementing, and updating to fend off these cheaters. But there's no mistaking one very important fact. I need to make this part clear. Even though the cheater I interviewed believed there's more cheating than ever, it's simply not true. There's an overall decline in the number of cheaters in the wild, update over update. And you may also just believe that everything you're hearing is what Riot wants you to believe, so let's have some fun here. You can actually search cheating forums and continuously see frustrated hackers getting their expensive hardware and countless hours of softwares banned. So the proof is in the pudding when we look over on the cheating side of things. One cheater here referring to Riot as anti-fun company, targeting rogue DMA devices. Or better yet, here we can see an entire forum of people trying to keep track on what they can buy and what still works. Yet, even within the comments, people argue on what's being detected or not. As Riot seeps into these very forums, they wreak havoc by banning what the cheaters believe are safe. But we can get a little bit more direct. Here we can see a legit public service announcement within the forum that all cheats are detected, and a public service announcement to not even buy any spoofers because they don't work anymore. Within the forum, comments of people commending anyone who's even still trying to cheat because of just how hard the battle has become for them. This next one might be my favorite. A forum just completely stating that Valorant cheats are dead. And what's funny is at a public level, all cheats online are versions of one another. Plenty of hackers buy someone else's code, possibly changing it up a bit and then creating a new SKU of that cheat, and then they try to sell it themselves. But still, the same problem persists. Riot gets their hand on any one of these SKUs, strengthens Vanguard, and the next ban wave has the entire thing purged across the board. However, there's still one major question. Riot buys hardware, they lurk the forums and study the cheats, but what about complete private cheats? As the name suggests, we wouldn't have much info on them. These are cheats that are coded privately for individuals at a very high price. They may also only be used for themselves and a few friends, keeping themselves and the code completely private. How can Vanguard fight these? Are private cheats the hardest ones to detect?
It's not necessarily how private they are that makes them hard to detect. It's how they're made, what they're using, and how they work that makes them harder to detect. The part that makes them harder to detect when they're private is just that there's not a lot of users using them, so they don't really pop up on the radar as much. There's a lot of things like color bots and pixel bots, which are either normally an aim or a trigger bot. They run somewhat external to the game. They would use typically a KM box or something like you mentioned before, or sometimes even a driver mouse input for an aim bot. and they just work by reading the screen. They don't interact with the game's process in any way at all. It's done completely external from the game. They don't even read game memory. So some of those that have a private driver and have the driver signed with an EK cert are actually able to run quite a long time, but they're not that common, and once they do get found, they're normally toast. They don't really come back a lot of the time, and they just move on to something else. I would say out of any of the cheats that anyone's going to be running, yeah, private ones, especially those kind of private ones, are the only ones that will be running for a long time and not actually get detected. But when you go into stuff with ESP and things like that actually mess with game memory or read it in any way, those do get detected quicker.
All right, wait, hold up. I sort of threw this interview right at you, so who exactly am I talking to? What exactly is your job? And like, what do you do with and for Riot?
So we sort of work alongside them. We're not hired by Riot. They don't directly have any business dealings with us. They don't pay us or anything like that. We're a volunteer group. The reason that works really well for us is because we have a lot more freedom to do things that as a large company they just couldn't do. So it lets us go after cheaters, infiltrate cheat groups and stuff like that directly. And if we were working as an employee of a company or a contractor of a company, it might be a little harder to go at some of those things legally. It could be a little bit complicated. It just means we don't have to go and check every single thing we do with management or whatever. And if we did have to do that, it would slow everything down a lot. And cheaters obviously aren't doing that themselves. They don't have anyone to check with. They just go and do whatever they want. So we would really lose that race. We'd be way behind them. With that, it just lets us kind of do our own thing. As long as we get information on cheaters, we get cheats, we can get them detected and banned.
That's Retro, and I had like a 4-hour interview with him. It'll be impossible to actually include the entire thing in this video, but this is where a lot of my information also came from, so I think it was important to at least include something. Whew, okay. We now know what's happening on Vanguard's side. We know how the cheaters are responding to all of it. We know that while we see a decline in cheaters, there's still a constant war going on between both parties, and it would be easy to conclude the video right around here. However, there's one other major issue within the community, and some even consider it cheating, which is smurfing and boosting. Now what's crazy is if you're a part of the Valorant community, this is probably one of the most important parts for you. It's not even to do exactly with hackers or cheating, and it's not even to do with Vanguard, but I want to touch on it just a little bit. In Riot's eyes, they are not healthy for the game. It's clear and acknowledged that there is both a smurfing and boosting epidemic in Valorant. This is not in our heads and is a real problem that the company is aware of. Actually, while Vanguard is extremely potent at fending off cheaters, a lot of people think there are more cheaters in Valorant simply due to smurfing being so prevalent. Now the truth here is the anti-cheat department is completely separate than the team in charge for handling this issue. The only glimpse of light I can offer is one day the smurfing issue will improve for the better. But that's all I'm allowed to say for now. And I know that might be disappointing because you guys definitely wanted more than this, and it's a problem that affects our games and their quality more than cheaters simply because there are way more smurfs than there are cheaters. And a lot of the root cause here is that account sharing itself is against Riot's TOS. They have the right to ban players for account sharing, but it's simply not happening. Or at least not at a great rate. Similar to how Twitch has their own rules but only enforces them based on public scandals, Riot sorta does the same thing here. They have it written in their TOS so they can utilize it to help appear more clean than it's actually being used to stay more clean. But again, no details I can share right now. However, I can say, hold on tight gamers, it'll be better in the future. Does Vanguard get more intrusive? Does Riot put more man-hours manually updating it to keep the games clean? Do cheaters find some huge new breakthrough? The people behind keeping Valorant clean are some dedicated individuals. I can't speak on how Vanguard will play out with League of Legends, as I have only done my research for Valorant here. With that being said, I know for a fact that after everything that went into making this video a reality, I have been more amazed by how much passion can float around something like this from both sides. If there's one thing I want to leave you with, it's something said on Riot's side that struck a chord with me. It proved their confidence on winning this war, keeping things clean and allowing us players to thrive. I quote, "I welcome you. Buy a cheat and try it yourself. See just how fast you get smacked." Bro, I can't believe he typed this. I love that.